My name is Batori. I'm 34 years old. I'm an associate professor here at the Batori University in Cluj-Napoca in film and television studies. I teach film studies mainly, film history and film theory, cognitive theory and image analysis. I hold a PhD from the University of Glasgow in film and television studies, where I was a screen scholarship PhD student. Now I am the head of a research group at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, which investigates blockbuster cinemas and hyper-de-narrativization techniques based on semiotics and semiotical investigations. I grew up in a very small town close to Batori, which is a pretty remote area. So I spend most of my time reading and watching movies at home and studying different kind of things that are of my interest and are still of my interest. And after my studies in Hungary, I graduated at ELTE University in film studies, film history, film theory and aesthetics. And then I started my journey abroad, which is still an ongoing process. I lived in more than 7 countries and lectured in more than 10 countries. I have publications because my interest is pretty wide. So I'm mainly interested in cultural phenomena and cultural studies because of this reason, and how the Foucauldian power mechanisms work in the 21st century. How his ideas and his discourses can be translated into the 21st century context. So because of this, my first research focus was on Eastern Europe and on spatial studies. In my first book, I coined a new term and a new film theory of vertical and horizontal spaces. And I'm really proud of this book because it was one of the bestsellers book in film studies. And my second book is on power mechanisms and bodily transformations on screen and on extreme cinema. So after writing a lot on rap music, on range, really so many movies and a lot of series from a cultural perspective and from a cognitive point of view. Now I turn my attention towards robotics and cinema. And it's really interesting because I think it's a very under-negotiated area in film studies. No one really likes blockbuster cinemas, and I love blockbuster cinemas. And I like the reaction on blockbuster films, why young people really love these kind of movies, why even if they don't understand the whole narrative flow or the whole narrative construction, they still stay in the cinema and watch the film. So after my main research in cultural studies and Eastern European history and different kind of context in scholarship, I think the main question now in the 21st century is in robotics. How is that possible that classic, modern and postmodern narratives do not function in the 21st century film studies scholarship? How is it possible that what we see on screen is basically the accumulation of science, a certain kind of simulation or stimulation that overrides classic film narratives and the whole paradigm? And I coined the term, and I think it's crucial to invent a new approach to film studies and film scholarship. So I go against the mainstream in scholarship. So it's really a brave step, I think, because what I state is that classic, modern and postmodern narrative and the whole contextualization of these narrative formulas do not work in 21st century cinema. My research focuses on the way how cybernetic mechanisms enter bodily fusions and transform on screen. And I use a postmodern context, not even a postmodern, a post-humanistic point of view, in order to understand how the body gets aligned with cybernetic mechanisms, which then privileges information over materiality. To put it in a very simple way, people love Transformers, for instance. They love big robotic blockbuster cinemas, even if they don't understand them. And I have to confess, I don't understand Transformers. Because there are so many things happening on screen, basically simulations or stimulations, that override everything we've known so far about cinema and narratives. The question is how this kinesthetic perspective overrides spectatorship, how narrative formulas get overwritten by post-humanistic and post-decomposed narrative mechanisms, and what kind of new cinema is there that stands in front of us. So that's the question. It's very interesting because usually in social studies and cultural studies, people are scared of investigating and dissecting cinemas that are not highbrow. They think of Transformers as very lowbrow cinema. They think of, like big science fiction movies as something that is not important. And I think the most important thing is especially this, to dissect the mainstream. Because if we only focus on marginalized phenomena, we lose our main interest that is to understand our society nowadays. I have a wonderful class, very talented students, amazingly talented young people. So the next generation is there and I'm so proud of them.